What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Inner City Jets. This is Thomas Christopher, also known as Tommy Jets, and this is the Jets Pulse, bringing you the top stories, news, and highlights for the New York Jets every week. Now, normally I'll be doing these on Wednesdays because of a little schedule adjustment in the first day of training camp, appeared on then. We're going to be doing it now every Wednesday. This is Friday. Fridays will be the Inner City Jets podcast, and that will be me bringing on some of the best Jets experts, analysts, fans, you name it. They're going to be here and we're going to talk Jets football. We can't go on without probably the biggest story heading in the training camp so far, and that's Haason Reddick, formerly of the Philadelphia Eagles. Jets traded for him. He didn't show up during minicamp, didn't show up during OTAs, and now he's not showing up during training camp. The Jets have put him on the did not report list, which, frankly, it means that they might not expect him to be here for a while. He's going to be missing significant time if that's the case, and he's going to be allocating a lot of fines too. And I know a lot of Jet fans aren't happy about that. And it's kind of interesting, Reddick is going to make $14.25 million base salary this year. The Jets, when they traded for him, they actually tried to re-sign him, and he didn't like the terms, and maybe he still doesn't like the terms. But reportedly from Rich Cimini and Connor Hughes, the Jets are still willing to do it, but they won't do it while he's not at camp. So it gets to a kind of interesting kind of standoff here. We all know that Quinn Williams recently got his contract re-signed with the Jets, and he kind of put it best. He knows how Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas work. I feel like if Reddick showed up to camp, this would be a non-issue. He would have the new contract signed, and he'd get that contract he wanted, and we get to see him play some football. It is unguaranteed salary this year, but the Jets also apparently tried to guarantee that per Connor Hughes. Still evidently hasn't worked out, which makes it interesting, because Reddick, despite all of this drama that's going on, Reddick is one of the premier pass rushers in the NFL right now. He's one of only two current players in the NFL with 10-plus sacks in 4 consecutive seasons. That's pretty amazing to think about. Not only that, since 2020 in those 4 seasons, he's had 50.5 sacks. That ranks 4th best in the NFL. So the Jets are getting a premier pass rusher after letting Bryce Huff leave to Philadelphia, and the Jets bring on that former Philadelphia Eagle. The key thing with Reddick has always been the sacks. His pressures are kind of average. He had a 12% pressure rate last season. It's just above league average. But what he does is converts those pressures into sacks. He had 25.1% of those pressures turned into sacks. The NFL average was only 16.6%. So it's kind of crazy when you think about what that's missing, what that could bode for the Jets defense this season. It's going to be huge. And I really hope that he shows up at some point during training camp, and it's not an extended holdout, because let's face it, entering the age 30 seasons, Joe Douglas, the move surprised me, to be honest. I'm still surprised that Joe Douglas opted to go with Haason Reddick instead of Bryce Huff and a combination of JFM. That whole situation still kind of rubs me the wrong way, and I know it rubs some Jet fans the wrong way as well, especially how we're seeing Reddick not showing up to camp, to be frank. This is a season now where Robert Saleh, Joe Douglas, all of these guys are on the hot seat if they don't perform well. Who knows if Aaron Rodgers stays if the Jets don't perform well? So a lot of things are riding on this season, and this type of distraction is not what the Jets want, and we know that for a fact. But for the good news for Jets, perhaps, is that it opens space and the opportunity for 2023 first-round pick Will McDonald to kind of step up. Personally, with the McDonald pick, I wasn't too much of a fan. I think they were doing it a lot of based on his athleticism, which is great. If he pans out, it's amazing. But that lack of statistics in college, the lack of plays in college, kind of leaves people to be wary. I really think fans should be wary, kind of see him kind of inch along. We saw Jermaine Johnson have kind of a down-ish rookie season, only to really step up in year 2. McDonald might not get that chance if Reddick is there, but in the meantime, during these important training camp reps, McDonald has to try to be the guy and really step up. And although he had limited snaps last year, he did somewhat well. He had the 7th highest pass rush win rate among all rookies since PFF started allocating their data in 2006. And that was with 16%. He's not bad. And among first round pass rushers since that data was released. He was ranked 4th, and believe it's only Will Anderson who's slightly ahead of him in terms of last year's class. So it's kind of interesting to see if he can step up, how that ends up panning out. There's a lot of issues now with the Jets front seven. I mean, we got the back end. We have C.J. Mosley. You have Quincy Williams. They're studs. Quinnen Williams is a stud. I don't think we have to worry about Jermaine Johnson anymore. I hope not. Let's see that third-year breakout, buddy. But, we have some questionable pieces with the aforementioned McDonald. We don't know what Reddick's going to do, like how that situation's going to play out. I really, really hope that Reddick shows up to camp, man, because it's going to be really, it's going to be unnecessary drama for Jets and Jets fans, and we all know we've had enough of that BS. But other than him, you have Javon Kinlaw, who up to this point, he hasn't really shown too much in the NFL. A former first-round pick, San Francisco 49ers. He's supposedly going to be the defensive tackle, too, behind Quinnen Williams, working alongside him. And he has to step up, too. He's familiar with Robert Saleh. First year together that he was in San Francisco, Saleh was there. So we have to hope that there's some type of magic there. We know when Saleh, tries to get his guys like Solomon Thomas had, his best year under Robert Saleh in New York last season. So maybe we can see something with Kinlaw this year, but that's, another position battle fans really have to be looking at as we enter this training camp period. Not only that, I really want to talk about the will linebacker position with Jamien Sherwood. Sherwood showed that he's really has a good prowess in the run game, which is huge. You can't really take that away from a player. The run being a stalwart in the run game is incredibly important. And he also showed, some potential as a pass rusher in rush situations, although that was limited. But where he really struggled, honestly, though, was pass coverage. And I've wrote about this, on JetsXFactor. I've wrote about this on my personal company website at the League Winners. You can check it out on GangGreenNation as well. Sherwood is not. He's not a great not a great coverage linebacker. And that is something that, the Jets defense doesn't have that many holes in it. That's something where opposing offenses could potentially take advantage this season, at least in the passing game. Tight ends, maybe they try to get tight ends on him, speedy receiving back, some scat backs, maybe even a slot wide receiver, depending on how the coverage looks. He comes in on sub packages, so we aren't likely to see him too much in these passing situations. But you can guarantee if an offense wants to try to take advantage on early downs while Sherwood is there, I hope that he improves, because otherwise it's going to be a detriment to the Jets defense, at least in the passing defense. Run defense, the kid's a stud. I don't want to take that away from him. You know what I mean? He's a great player. He just has to improve on that end. And when I say he needs to improve, man, he was one of the worst in the NFL for defensive coverage last season. So other than that, though, the Jets defense kind of looks solid. We have the main guys on the front seven that we have already talked about, which, should be fun. And then we have the back end as well. Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, Michael Carter. There's I don't think there's a better trio, honestly, at cornerback in the NFL. We might even see Stiggers replace DJ Reed going forward, man. As much as it hates to say it, I would really want to keep an eye on that contract situation with Reed. Reed has already spoken about that contract issue, about him not getting extended yet. I think he may know this might be his last season with the Jets. I really hope not, because the guy's a great player. But at the same time, everybody knows this is a business. It's what works best. And if Stiggers has looked good so far in the early days of training camp and OTAs, but it's nothing until we start seeing some live reps, obviously. And then we have Chuck Clark, Tony Adams, and Ashton Davis bringing out that secondary and the safety position. Those are the primary guys there. Ashton Davis, man, talk about a surprise, right? I don't think too many. I think a lot of Jets fans kind of gave up on Ashton Davis prior to last season. He stepped up a bit. And we got that second contract, one of the few Jets who's gotten a second contract, mind you, in the recent years here. That wasn't a first-round pick. Even then, look at Becton and Zach Wilson. But, you got to love it. I love to see guys kind of grit it out. And, hey, man, if he has that opportunity and he continues to shine, all love. I think Jet fans would absolutely love that. So we're hitting defense side of the ball, but we can't end this little quick segment until we talk about the offensive side of the ball. And the offensive side obviously revolves around Aaron Rodgers. Jet fans only saw 4 snaps of the guy last season. And I know if you were like me, it just broke your heart to see all that potential get washed down the drain in a matter of 4 snaps. Jets ended up winning that game in OT against Buffalo in week 1, but hey, they won the battle, but they did not win the war. And unfortunately, the 2003 season was kind of a disaster. This year, the Jets kind of stepped up and brought in Tyrod Taylor. He's a little older, injury prone as well, but he's leaps and bounds better than any type of quarterback the Jets have had the team in recent years. That's goes without saying. But the big question is, will Aaron Rodgers be ready? I've had a couple friends who've torn their Achilles, and they weren't as ready as this man is. So it's a medical miracle that he's going to be here, taking full reps, full snaps. He may not still trust his Achilles, but hey, he doesn't have to trust it in order to play well, and that can be important. I would assume that the quick passing game is going to be. I know we didn't see it yesterday. We saw a lot of deep throws yesterday, especially that one to Garrett Wilson, which was incredible. But hey, I think a lot of the offense is going to be predicated on some of these short, quick throws, at least early. Try to get him out of the pocket, try to get the defenses moving laterally, and then take advantage through the air and deep passes. And it's going to be interesting to see how Rodgers' leg and his Achilles hold up. The offensive line looks a lot better now than it did last year. That's for certain. We've already had numerous beat writers suggest that during these quite limited training camps. But another position where I'm kind of worried about is that wide receiver 2 spot. We have Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson's a stud. We all know Garrett Wilson's a stud. But what are they doing at wide receiver 2? They brought Mike Williams in. But Mike Williams might not even be ready for week 1. Even if he is, he's likely getting started slowly. We probably won't see him look somewhat like himself, at least in a participation aspect, until week 6-ish, I think they said. And that's even the question on his own, if he even returns. We saw Michael Gallup just retire because he couldn't recover from his ACL. People can say it's a lack of talent. The kid was talented. We saw in his early years prior to the ACL tear that Michael Gallup was a talented player. We've seen multiple players have, especially a wide receiver, have issues returning after an ACL, especially guys who aren't necessarily known as route runners and more jump ball specialists, which Michael Gallup was, which Mike Williams is. And Mike Williams is older than Michael Gallup. So I have some injury concerns with Mike Williams truly being available for the wide receiver 2. So that leaves us to 2 other players, at least in the short term, who are probably going to be wide receiver 2. That'd probably be Allen Lazard and maybe Xavier Gibson. If we want to talk Malachi Corley, I'm kind of leaving him out for now, just because Rodgers historically doesn't necessarily target rookie wide receivers in their first season. Kind of makes guys have to go through the growing pains, so to speak, in order for them to learn the playbook, make sure they get the trust of Rodgers, which makes sense. And I don't know if Corley can play, in the other outside positions. I think he's primarily just a slot guy. I think his, Yak potential is a little bit overestimated by some Jet fans. The Deebo Samuel 2.0 stuff is kind of tired when you see the competition that he was doing it against. So I'm just hoping that that's not the case and he performs well. But with that said, the primary number 2 wide receivers, at least that can play these outside positions, are going to be Allen Lazard and Xavier Gibson. And let's be honest, those guys don't really give you a vote of confidence. Last year, Allen Lazard only had 23 catches, 311 yards, 1 touchdown. He also got healthy scratched throughout the season, especially at the end of the season, proving that he, A, couldn't hold on to the ball, and B, just wasn't being trustworthy in practice. He just wasn't showing up. He was getting outperformed, point blank period. Now, some of that may be because of Rodgers, which, hey, I wouldn't blame him. If I signed up with a team and my guy got hurt and then I had to play with Zach Wilson, all respect to Zach as a person, but as a player, man, that's got to be rough, especially for the wide receiver position. That makes me give a lot more respect to Garrett Wilson, too, for being as humble and as, despite him saying it was one of the worst seasons of his football career, as humble as he's been. That's huge to see. You got to love that. Hopefully Garrett Wilson doesn't leave New York. Let's hope that. But anyway, as for Lazard, man, he might be the guy to step up. If Rodgers is healthy, we've seen him already start to be kind of a focal point with Rodgers in camp and OTAs. He's still having some drop issues. Let's not get carried away and say he's playing great. He's still having some drop issues, but at the same time, we know Rodgers trusts him. There's been plays during training camp where specifically the trust and chemistry between those two guys were evident, and I think he might have the lead on that, as opposed to Gibson. Gibson had 21 catches last year, 229 yards, no receiving touchdowns. Showed a great prowess as a returner. I think that's where he makes his mark for the Jets this season, is at the returner position. But outside of that, it's very difficult to see Gibson take over as anything more than a wide receiver 4. You got to hope that Malachi Corley can hold him off at the wide receiver 3 spot. If not, that's still sketchy to me. You know what I mean? So we got Garrett Wilson, wide receiver 1, obviously. For now, start of the season, probably Allen Lazard, wide receiver 2, and we'd have to think Malachi Corley is wide receiver 3 in the slot. Hopefully Mike Williams progresses well and shows the Mike Williams burst of old and playmaking ability of old. I personally have my doubts considering his age, the injury, when it happened, and the recovery time. It's a lot of things are going against him, unfortunately. But you really hope that it pans out and everything else can kind of be okay. I mean, the Jets offensive line is great right now. They got rid of Mekhi Becton, who was dogging it for a long time. They got rid of a lot of players, and they brought in a bunch of fresh new faces. Love seeing just the tip Joe Tippmann running under center. I think he could potentially be Nick Mangold-esque after a couple years in the league. We'll see, especially working with somebody like Aaron Rodgers. It's just going to bode well for him. And then we have Tyron Smith, which is huge. We have Olufushanu, who's a great tackle at Penn State. You can find my personal write-up on him at the League Winners website on our rookie guide. We have over 150 rookies on there if anybody was interested, including Malachi Corley as well. Morgan Moses, John Simpson, and then of course we have AVT. That's just leaps and bounds better than what we had to deal with last year, and we're already starting to see it in training camp. You just got to hope that AVT can come back healthy, that the line can stay healthy, because there's a lot of older guys with some injury history, especially Smith as well. Smith and AVT, probably the biggest question marks right now in terms of health. But if those guys stay healthy, man, that's Pro Bowl, all-pro talent for the Jets offensive line. And then let's not forget about Breece Hall. Running back. Let's just see how it goes. He wants to get over 1,000 rushing yards. It's kind of crazy to think that he hasn't yet going into his third season. Injuries obviously played a role in that, but I think it's really possible. I think the Jets are really going to rely heavily on the run game, the short game laterally, to try to get these defenses to spread themselves out and then take advantage over the top with either Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams, or maybe Lazard, Xavier Gibson. Who knows? But behind that, we got Braylon Allen, another person who's right up. You can find on the League Winners, somebody who I've loved. I've loved Braylon Allen at Wisconsin. Just a great power runner. Reminds me of a lot of Matt Forte, to be honest with you. Same kind of one cut back. He runs a little bit smaller than he should, which also reminds me of Matt Forte. You guys got to remember, Matt Forte was not a power rusher either. But Matt Forte was great at pass blocking, which is what Braylon Allen is great at. Pass catching. Braylon Allen has shown he can be great at that as well. And, just making that quick one cut and go. Braylon Allen's a big boy, and he can get that one cut, and we've already seen him in college be able to take off running and not look back. And I think he's really going to push for the number 2 spot. I think he might even be the plan if Breece Hall doesn't get a second contract with the Jets. I think that he might be the next guy up, one of the youngest players in the NFL right now, and might be the youngest. So things are looking up, man. It's the first week of training camp. But the next Wednesday, I'll actually be at the training camp practice on the 30th. My daughter's birthday is on the 29th. Tia, I love you, baby. And Jets open training camp on the 30th. I'll be there. Make sure you guys come and see me. We'll be dropping the next video of the Jets Pulse on Wednesday, and then on Friday we will have the podcast featuring a special guest. I'm not going to give that away yet, but it will be nice. So I appreciate you guys checking out the first one, first episode of the Jets Pulse. We'll have it keep going weekly throughout the season for your New York Jets coverage, and maybe I'll start adding some fancier things on the channel in terms of graphics and all that fun stuff. But I just appreciate everybody who's supporting the channel so far and continue to do so as we go through this season, which is hopefully one of the best in the history of the New York Jets. So with that, it's Thomas Christopher, aka Tommy Jets. Make sure to follow the Inner City Jets on Instagram. Subscribe to us on YouTube at youtube.com/@InnerCityJets. Make sure to subscribe. We have some Monday montages of Garrett Wilson breakdown route running that will go up until the start of the season, and then we'll start posting some full game, full offenses, full defenses. So there's a lot of exciting stuff going forward. I'm really happy to share it with all of you. And until next time, that's how we're going to run it. So I appreciate everybody checking me out.